Good morning, everyone, from the Catskill Mountains of New York. This area is renowned for its mountain scenery. It's absolutely awesome, but as you can see, it's April, a lot of the trees are dead, so that wasn't much of an option. Instead, we're taking the opportunity to see a bunch of waterfalls in the region because they are flowing very well this time of year. This is April 2025, and we're going to show you all of the best waterfalls in the Catskill region of New York. Let's do it. Real quick, before we tackle the Catskill region's best waterfalls, I did just want to point out that to me, prior to this trip, it was the Finger Lakes and Adirondacks that stood out as New York's most naturally spectacular areas. And while that still might be true, I didn't realize there was a third part of the state that was right up there with them. Like said, this video isn't outright a Catskill Mountains video guide, but I do hope to spotlight some underrated gems in said mountains, many of which are less than a 2-hour drive from New York City. If you're watching this and happen to live there, I hope today's content inspires you to get away and enjoy the great outdoors. Now, the one spot in this video I'm sure many of you will have heard of is Catskill Falls, located in the protected Catskill Wild Forest just outside the town of Catskill. What makes this waterfall so famous is that it's New York's tallest waterfall, which, if you've seen my Finger Lakes video, you'll know is no small feat. There's a few different ways to experience these falls, but I'd recommend driving up to the Laurel House trailhead for both the Catskill Falls viewing platform and one of 2 trail options that get you down to the base, the other of which being just down the road. A hike that combines the two will run you nearly 2 miles out and back with 390 feet of elevation gain. Since this is such a popular location, the trails are very nicely maintained and therefore quite simple to traverse. Even the steep parts of the base trail are more approachable than I expected due to them consisting of steps as opposed to rocky switchbacks. Getting back to the viewing platform, my first impression of Catskill Falls was amazing. The upper tier, which you see on screen here, is 175 feet tall, which doesn't alone make it the tallest waterfall in the state, but it is still massive. And the way it's positioned in this gorge with the Catskill Mountains in the backdrop is sensational. But what shocked me most was the cluster of snow wrapping around the lower parts of the falls. The addition of that unique element brought this spot to the next level for me, and that was before I'd even gotten to the base view. Catskill Falls has been on my bucket list for years because it's just so impressive how you have this huge waterfall, and this is really the only waterfall of this scale in the region, as you'll find out in this video. I mean, we'll see some other really cool ones, but none on the scale of this. This is enormous, absolutely lived up to the hype. Seeing the snow around the upper one was so cool. Yeah, definitely one of the best waterfalls I've seen in the east without hesitation. As you can see, I was blown away by the base views, and there's quite a few you can get. One set of stairs take you down to the bottom of the lower falls, which is 85 feet tall in and of itself. That shot with both tiers in frame might be my favorite of the video, absolutely incredible. The other brings you face to face with the upper falls as well as the aforementioned snow. I was so impressed by the flow rate and couldn't have asked for a better experience at Catskill Falls, which is now definitely a contender for my favorite waterfall in New York. Next up, we had 10 miles down the road to a shockingly underrated falls considering its close proximity to Catskill. The similarly named Platakill Falls can be accessed by an easy half-a-mile round-trip roadside trail. There's enough parking for just a few vehicles, and while all trails list this as moderate, I think it's a piece of cake. Sure, there's 111 feet of elevation gain, but it's honestly relatively gradual and well worth it for the falls. Platakill Falls is really cool. It's a wonder why no one really talks about it, considering how close it is to Catskill Falls. It's not the most impressive waterfall in the world, like height-wise, it's not crazy, but it's just really nice. It's in its own secluded area. It's got that pool at the bottom. Yeah, I really like this one. It's cool. Platakill Falls stands somewhere between 51 and 80 feet tall. Different sources say different things. And while I'd personally lean towards the former as it doesn't look particularly big, it's highly satisfying with a really cool shape. I like how the trajectory of the falls kind of split into 2 at the top before crashing down into the pool below. Absolutely recommend this spot. Don't miss it if you're already checking out Catskill Falls. On the way down to the southern Catskill Mountains for my most anticipated spot of the day, we made a 30-minute detour for 2 pretty neat hidden gems. First, and less significant, is Buttermilk Falls, which is situated right off the side of the road. Buttermilk Falls Brook is literally right off the road. Like, we are standing in the middle of the road right now, and there it is. You can just walk on this trail here to get right up to the base. There's no signage for Buttermilk Falls. You'll just see a tiny gravel lot and a short walk over to the base. This steep and narrow cascade emerges from a slim gorge and drops 36 feet in height, which isn't much, but its location alongside those mossy layered cliffs is awesome. Then it lands in a small pool, which transitions in another 4-foot drop before meeting with Rondout Creek, which you'll see more of in a second. All around, this was well worth checking out considering its cakewalk accessibility and because it's right next to the trailhead for the Peekaboo's Blue Hole. It's worth noting that you will need a permit to access this spot in the warmer summer months, as a lot of people use it for swimming. I don't have any stats to share about the trail length, but you'll find the start of it on the other side of the road, and we'll walk a short, flat path along Rondout Creek. It kind of blew my mind that this was considered a creek because to me this is a full-fledged river, plus you have these sizable cascades flowing into it, which was beautiful. Spoiler alert, it's not a waterfall we're hiking to, but you do see some seasonal falls along the way, so I think it qualifies for this video. In any case, Peekaboo's Blue Hole is absolutely gorgeous as it's extremely clear and forms a circular shape. Now, I'm unsure if it's because we went in the spring as opposed to the summer when it's much brighter and warmer out, but at least for us, it was much greener than it was blue. Not a big deal since it's pretty regardless, but thought that was worth mentioning
mentioning, since it wasn't necessarily what I expected.
I know I'm kind of cheating by including this, but the blue hole, as much as it isn't really a waterfall, there are waterfalls around it, which is awesome. And it was actually pretty cool. Like, it wasn't super blue in my opinion, it was more green, but still very, very clear, beautiful water for sure. Glad we stopped.
As we made our way further south, we found ourselves getting hungry, so we made a quick stop at a little roadside diner, which I wanted to shout out for the video.
We've driven by so many cute restaurants in the Catskills of New York, and we found one right here that serves ice cream and other stuff too, cherries. So we're gonna try this.
I always love stopping at these tiny little country restaurants on my road trips, and Cherries is one of the best I've been to in recent memory. I got this sandwich that was like a BLT with apple slices in it and a butterscotch ice cream, which was tremendous.
I got a chocolate vanilla swirl with butterscotch on top, drizzled on, and that is so freaking good. This soft serve is legit. The food was also great. Highly recommend.
As outstanding as Catskill Falls was, the pinnacle of the video to me is Minnewaska State Park, which we spent the latter half of the day at. The 22,275 acre preserve is fascinating in that it protects this plateau of sorts. You'll be elevated real high up during your time here, which makes all the scenery even more impressive. The location results in many unique geological features and diverse ecosystems. Because of how cold and windy it gets, the ecosystem almost mimics something you might see further north in Canada, particularly in the southern part of the park, which I'll get to later. There's also some really interesting bodies of water called sky lakes, with the most iconic being Lake Minnewaska. This can be found right next to the park's main visitor center, which, by the way, is super clean and modern. Honestly, one of my favorites I've seen in a state park due to its classy architecture style and plentiful information on what makes this place so different. Lake Minnewaska is stunning, not just for its size, but also its towering rock cliffs that trace the perimeter of it. I was stoked to get to see this, but it's not what got us to make the drive out here. That'd be the park's waterfalls, of which there's 3 major ones, and I'll be highlighting the 2 best today.
Okay, we've made it to Minnewaska State Park. This is actually a bucket list state park. This place has a lot that we're going to be checking out in the next couple hours, and I'm really looking forward to it. We're going to start by heading out to Awasting Falls.
Awasting Falls is by far the most visited because of how easily accessible it is, about a mile out and back and flat all the way until you reach the top of it. I was immediately floored by the flow rate, which was so much more than even the past few waterfalls we'd visited. Well, I came to find out that was because of the plateau setting, because what happens is since it's far colder up here, it's more so prone to heavy snowfall, and a few days before our visit, the entire place was covered with that stuff. Fast forward to when we went and it was all freshly melted, meaning the waterfalls were raging out of control.
I cannot believe the flow rate of Awasting Falls right now. This is unbelievable. This has actually been a bucket list waterfall of mine for quite a little while now, ever since I saw Severance. Basically in the show, there's a group of people that work for this company Lumen who sever themselves between their work life and their personal life, and eventually in season 2, their work selves begin to long for what is out there. And so they are brought to the wilderness, specifically Minnewaska State Park where we are right now, and they are told that this is the tallest waterfall on Earth, which obviously is not true, but they don't know any better because they're severed. This is so freaking cool being here, and yeah, it's absolutely one of the best waterfalls in the region, that's for sure.
Awasting Falls is 65 feet tall and is surrounded on both sides by these amazing layered rock cliffs. Their darker shade combined with the somewhat dreary weather up here give this waterfall a more ominous vibe, if you will. I enjoyed some distant angles and side angles of the falls before heading out, but man was this a tough one to walk away from. Awasting Falls is absolutely awesome and totally worthy of the hype. Now, because of how expansive this park is, it took us 30 minutes to drive to the southern unit where you have more must-dos for those capable. This is the Sam's Point Trail up to Platakill Falls, which I want to say was about 6 miles round trip with like 1,000 feet of elevation gain. It was by far the most difficult hike of the trip and one of the hardest I've ever done in the eastern United States. But before I talk about why, I wanted to break down the early parts of the trail, which are far easier than the rest. Just getting to Sam's Point is a relatively mild 15 to 20 minute walk through the woods and past some of those steep cliffs that we saw at the lake earlier. Turns out there's a lot more where that came from in the southern part of Minnewaska State Park, and right before getting to this overlook, you even get to climb through this narrow staircase carved through the rock. It was a really neat slot canyon type thing that supposedly is an appetizer for something called the ice caves, which come later. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Sam's Point is the highest point in the park with an elevation of 2,289 feet. The views weren't anything amazing with all the dead trees, but standing along the edge of those cliffs and getting them in frame was pretty cool. From there, you walk along a service road which spans the entire length of the state park, but don't count on it as a great way to see all that it has to offer, as it's actually really boring with trees covering the view on either side. Fortunately, you aren't on it for very long before a trail begins to form on the right, which leads to Platakill Falls and the ice caves. Now, I'm not super knowledgeable about what these caves are, but I do know that they weren't open yet for the season and that you do need a permit to experience it when it is. And naturally, in the summer and fall when you can explore it, the falls likely aren't flowing the best, so I don't regret the time of year I got to come by any means. The trail splits once more and remains extremely narrow for miles and miles until you get to the waterfall. This is where the difficulty ramps up by probably tenfold, and there's a handful of reasons for that. 1, it's super rocky, meaning you'll have to watch your step almost the entire time. 2, it's so narrow at points that you'll have to do a bit of bushwhacking. At no point will you you actually lose the trail, but it is pretty annoying to traverse.
Sometimes while hiking, I think to myself, do I really like this? And then I get to the payoff and I'm like, yeah, that was worth it. But man, this type of trail can be very, very frustrating, especially when it's miles on miles like this one.
On rare occasions, there'd be short boardwalk sections for whatever reason, but they served as a nice break. Oh, and because of the recent snow melt, a good chunk of the trail was flooded, meaning I'd have to jump across small pools of water or take muddy spurs as an alternative. There were just so many factors that made this a pretty unenjoyable experience, to be honest, but on the plus side, there is some highly unique scenery along the way. Because of the reasons I stated earlier, the ecosystem is unorthodox up here, especially due to the globally rare forest you'll find here consisting of pitch pines, which are a type of evergreen tree. They pop so vibrantly against the dead flora and distant valleys, so that was a pleasant sight to see. But as much as it was unexpected and cool, eventually I did long for something new since the landscape doesn't change for basically the whole rest of the hike. So I just decided to lock in and grind out what I had left, which I'm happy to say was 100% worth it. But victory wouldn't be handed to me easily, as I had to navigate an intense water crossing before the very end.
This is one of the scariest water crossings I've ever done, because literally the top of the waterfall is right there, and it is a 100-something foot drop after that point.
Because of how strong the current was, this was a rather terrifying water crossing. I chose not to think about the fact that one misstep could send me out over the waterfall, which worked to my benefit, as I was able to calmly and carefully cross to the other side. Soon after, I was hit with the big reveal that I'd been waiting for, and man, was it an exhilarating moment.
For Platakill Falls, baby, we made it! That was a pain to get to, but this thing is raging right now. Unbelievable.
Even though you aren't able to get to the base of these falls, my god are the side views amazing. Platakill has a height of 187 feet, meaning that's what, the third tallest in New York? I've heard almost no one talk about this waterfall, so that is mind-blowing to me. I felt like I just discovered one of the most overlooked natural landmarks in maybe the entire state. While I can't say I'll be in a rush to ever do this hike again, I'm so glad I got to experience it this one time, especially since these falls take a lot of water to flow well. As far as I'm concerned, this is Platakill Falls with a close to, if not peak volume of water, which is outstanding.
Well, that's going to do it then from the Catskills. Minnewaska State Park might actually be one of my favorite state parks here on the east coast of the United States. I love this place. I thought it was so unique, and the waterfalls were way better than I expected. As for the Catskills region as a whole, like, yes, the mountains weren't particularly beautiful this time around. They weren't green at all, but every single spot we went to in the Catskills I thought was great. So yeah, I'll definitely be back in this area at some point to check out some of the mountain hikes, but in terms of a waterfall day, 10 out of 10, highly recommend. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.